and welcome back to the Mamas Who Brunch. I am Jeline, your host, and thank you once again for joining us for the podcast. Welcome Meagan Street to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
She is joining us to talk about her story of her adoption process with her son, Ezra. Meagan is an orthopedic nurse. She works from home with her kids. What an amazing blessing. She lives in Louisville, Kentucky. She's actually moving into a new home today. So thank you so much for being here. I think it's amazing that you're wearing all these hats. That's what this podcast is about, for literally women like you. She has a son, Jackson, who's 7 years old, a sweetheart, cute little blonde boy. And then she decided to adopt with her husband, and they have Ezra, who they have adopted, and he's 14 months old. So he's 2 months younger than my daughter. But Meagan, I'm so glad that you're here. I appreciate you giving the time, and thank you so much for joining.
Of course, I'm so excited.
Before we dive in, do you want to share anything about yourself, anything that I didn't cover that you would love for listeners to know about you?
I guess one of my favorite things for people to know about me is that I married my best friend. We do have our two awesome children, Jackson and Ezra. Jonathan is my husband, and we got married. It'll be 12 years this year.
Wow.
He's my very best friend in the world, and we grew up together. And that's just one of my favorite things for people to know about me.
I've known you guys since you were dating, so that's how long we've known each other. I feel like I didn't know you before you dated Jonathan. So you guys have always been like together.
Yeah, we started dating in 2010.
I know you guys have been through so much, like you've moved, gotten a few different homes, like your life has been busy. So today we're talking about a piece of that, which is just your adoption story. But I am so excited to talk to you because I feel like, you know, there's so much to adopting. There's a lot of unknowns. Like I don't know many people that have adopted. And I would love to know more about your story. So let's kind of start in the beginning, if that sounds good.
Yeah, for sure.
So when did adoption like first enter your heart? Is it something that you felt like you've always been called to do? Or was there like a point in time where you're like, we want to adopt?
So for me, I knew I wanted to adopt before me and Jonathan were ever married. And when we lived in Southern Illinois, I worked for a family physician. And in our clinic, we've seen a lot of not necessarily adopted children, but foster children. I fell in love with foster, and that's what I really wanted to do. 2013 is when I first really felt like I really wanted to adopt. My idea of adoption, though, was more like foster to adopt. But that's when we lived in Southern Illinois. And when we moved to Louisville in 2019, December of 2019, we had our son Jackson by then. And so I had kind of shifted my focus from that, obviously. I didn't really want to foster living in a metropolitan area. In Southern Illinois, where it was rural, I was more comfortable with the idea of fostering. Then we had a son, that was already in our home. And I didn't want to introduce things that could be harmful to him. So my idea of adoption evolved from there.
What was the difference in your mind about the rural versus metropolitan? What was the difference that you thought would be different?
Well, I feel like there's just so much, not that there's drugs in Southern Illinois, the rural areas, but I feel like there's so many more severe cases of like abuse, neglect, stuff like that in metropolitan areas compared to rural areas.
I've never lived in a rural area, so I'm curious. Sure. Like I can see what you're saying. So yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing. I know that wasn't like scripted, but
honestly, having our biological son is what changed my idea for adoption. Until you are a parent, you can't understand what you want for your children, and I just didn't want for my biological son to take the risk of introducing things into his life that would be unsafe for him to learn or things like that.
So you felt to adopt based on your experience and like seeing foster children, and originally you wanted to foster to adopt. Can you kind of explain what that process is like?
Yeah. So one thing about fostering is that you're not guaranteed to keep the child that's in your home. The goal for state workers is always to get the child back with their biological family if it's safe for them. The best option typically is always for a child to be with their biological parent, if it's the safest and if the biological parent wants the child back. But then if that is deemed unsafe or not possible for the child, then that child goes into the adoption system. And you can foster without intention to adopt. So you can foster just to help these children through a tough time. And then at that point, if the state does remove the parents' rights as parents, then they go into the adoption. So then if you do want to adopt, then at that point you can pursue adoption, but you're not
Got it.
guaranteed to be able to keep the child. I didn't want a child to come into our home and then our son get attached and then have to remove that
Yeah.
child from his life.
Is that why you changed from just doing the foster to adopt versus just an adoption?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how did Jonathan, your husband, was he open to this idea?
So to give a little backstory, we obviously have our biological son, but we did struggle getting pregnant with him. It took us about 2 years to get pregnant with
Oh,
Jackson.
wow.
I
I did not.
never, yes, I never did any fertility treatment. In fact, I had called a fertility specialist and made an appointment and then found out I was pregnant with Jackson. And so I called and canceled the appointment. After Jackson, we did wait a while because I struggled with postpartum depression pretty severely. And then we also moved from our hometowns to the city and left our support system. We had a new support system here in Louisville, but left our families, left our parents, my
Yeah.
siblings.
What was comfortable in
Yes.
your life?
Yes, exactly. And so we waited a while, but then we struggled to get pregnant again. Adoption came a little sooner for us than we had anticipated. We expected to have a few more biological children first. Jonathan had never really said yes or no about adoption. Jackson wanted a sibling so bad. He was probably 5. Secondary infertility was so much harder for us than the first time around, because the first time around it was just me and Jonathan that were disappointed when I wasn't pregnant. But the second time around, it was Jackson asking, when am I going to get a baby brother or sister? And that was hard, because as a parent, you want to give your child everything. I couldn't give my son what he wanted in a sibling. And that impacted me as a woman in a big way, because it was like I can't even do what my body's supposed to do. Like I really struggled with that feeling, because my son wants a sibling. I can't give him that. I was really struggling with being angry at God, and that's not usually something that I have struggled with. I was really angry, and this one Sunday morning I woke up and I felt to start praying, really just, not that I hadn't been praying, but the Lord impressed on me to really start praying for the growth of our family. And it was a Sunday morning. We went to church and the prayer line started. I was standing back and I was considering whether or not I should go down for prayer. And I felt like the Lord impressed on me, if you have this certain person say a prayer for you, I'll meet your need. And so I went down for prayer, and this certain person prayed with me. And the next day I woke up and I was sitting on the couch talking to Jonathan, and we got a message from our next door neighbor asking if we knew anyone interested in adoption. So in my mind, I thought God was telling me he was going to meet my need through me having another biological child. But we got this message from our neighbor, and this little boy came into our home for a very short period of time. His name was Nathaniel, and we thought we were going to adopt him. He was 4 months old, but that didn't happen, and we were devastated. And
Oh my goodness, I did not know that this happened.
yes.
How long was he with you?
He was in our life for about a week and a half.
Very short.
It was very, very
And
short.
you didn't make that like very public, because I
No.
didn't hear about that, so it must have
No.
been like very,
Yeah,
just kept it in the family.
it was very quiet. We were devastated when it didn't happen. I got even madder, and I was like, God, you told me that if I did this, you'd meet my need. And then I felt like he had just dangled something in front of me and then ripped it away,
Yes.
and so I really, yeah, and I really just struggled. And Jonathan asked me that a few days later, and he looked at me and he said, Meagan, why have we not pursued adoption yet? And I said, I don't know. I've always kind of just wanted it to be his idea, because I knew I wanted to do it, but I needed to know without a shadow of a doubt that he wanted to do it too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a big commitment. Like, you definitely want to go into that together. Tell me about the process. Like, I'd love to know, just for people that are thinking of doing this themselves. You guys filled out the application process. So you had the application process, and it's kind of set up like you guys have you see the profiles, right, and the situations, and then they can see you. You can submit a request for them to view your profile.
You make, after we were accepted, after our home study was complete and we were approved to pursue adoption, we made a profile, and we actually have a physical book It's like 20 pages. We had to put about our life within that inside that book. And that was our profile book. If it was someone far away, we had a PDF version that our agency would send, or obviously if it was someone local, they could get a physical copy of the book in their hand and see our profile.
That's interesting. I did not realize that that
Hmm.
was part of the process. It makes sense and it's nice because they are involved. They're not choosing to have their child taken away from them. This is something that they don't want to do, but they're in a situation where they don't have a choice. So you were talking about your very first like situation that you viewed and your application was chosen,
Yes,
which is unheard of completely. Does not
yes,
happen.
doesn't happen. I talked with the lawyer. The lawyer called to tell us that we had been selected. He just gave me a rundown. We did do a FaceTime call with them before it was 100% finalized, and so that night we face messaged them, and we both felt like we birth father and birth mother, and we all felt like we wanted to go ahead with it. I think she was 12 weeks pregnant, and she told us that she was pregnant with a little boy.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So you got to meet virtually and you matched with this child. What was the next step in the process?
At that point, that's where the finances became involved, and we had to send, money to the lawyer. I want to be very careful how much um, information I give specifically about the birth parents. I want to be very respectful of them, but
Of course.
the reason that they had to put Ezra up for adoption was because they had three other children. At that time, the children were 3, 4, and 5. The 5-year-old is very autistic. They had also were living in a car. When she found out she was pregnant, they all 5 of them were living in their car, and so adoption was
My
their only
goodness.
choice.
3 kids, 2 adults, and 3 kids in a vehicle.
In a vehicle, a car, yeah, a 5
My
passenger
goodness.
car. So at that point, that's how they afforded to get an apartment, was by pursuing adoption. At that point, we kept communication with them. I don't know why I can remember the date, but it was September 14th. We had been matched for almost a month, and we got a message from our birth mother at like 3 o'clock in the morning. She was in a bad situation, and there was possibly some concern that Ezra had been harmed. It was Friday night, Saturday morning that we found out about this. They were on the northwest side of Arkansas, and we're in Louisville, Kentucky. We're far away, and my heart was already there. I mean, he was already ours.
Yeah, of
In
course.
my heart, he was already ours. And when I was pregnant with Jackson, I felt like I had some control because he was inside me and I could protect him. But that wasn't the situation with Ezra. Someone else was carrying him and I couldn't protect him. And that was one of the hardest things for me, was already loving this baby and I couldn't protect him. And
I can't
so,
imagine that feeling as a mother,
yeah.
releasing that control.
Hmm.
So that's a brave step for you to do.
I had to give it to God. I mean, I couldn't carry that. It was more than I could handle. But in this situation, I was very distraught, and Jonathan was upset. We're trying to be normal for Jackson so that he doesn't know something's wrong. We wake up Saturday morning, we go about our day. We were taking Jackson to a like construction vehicle thing downtown Louisville. I was trying so hard to be normal for Jackson. And we went on to church that night. I was just so upset and distracted. And we had some friends from Springville, Alabama, who were doing a fundraiser for us. This was the shirt for the fundraiser for Ezra. This woman had seen we were adopting. She goes to one of our churches in Cincinnati. Jonathan knew of her, but I didn't know her. We got a message from her on Facebook that night. This is when all this is going on, and I'm just super distraught. And we got this message from her asking for our Venmo. I gave her Jonathan's Venmo, and she sent us a donation. She said, I don't really want a t shirt, but I want to donate to your adoption. And she put a scripture. She put 1 Samuel 1:27, and it was for this child we have prayed. And just in that moment that we were so distraught, and wondering, did we do the right thing pursuing adoption? And in that moment, this woman that we didn't know reached out and sent us, it wasn't about the money. It was about God showing us in that very moment that He was with us. It was incredible. It was exactly what we needed. Just God showing, I'm here with you. I'm not abandoned you. We woke up the next day. Jonathan got plane tickets and we flew out there.
Wow.
We took
Wow.
Jackson to some friend's house and we flew out there. Um, and our birth mother and the birth siblings on a Sunday in September of 2024. And we met them for the first time and took them to dinner. And it was one of the most anxiety provoking things I've ever done in my life.
I can't
Yeah.
even imagine, like, how did you feel before you
Oh my.
went in and during that conversation?
I was sick, physically sick. We had to fly into Tulsa, and that was still like an hour drive from Tulsa to where we were going. We're going to see these people that we'd never met in our life. It was kind of a, rough situation anyways, and then we're going to meet these people that we didn't know. I have never been so nervous about anything in my life. It was anxiety provoking. We went and picked her and the kids up and took them to dinner. The birth
Mhm.
mother and birth father were both born in the Marshall Islands, so they speak Marshallese. They speak some English, but not very well. And so there was a language barrier, which was one of the hardest parts. But I I remember seeing her belly, and because it was the fourth child she had carried, she started showing very early. And I
Mhm.
remember seeing her belly, and she wasn't far enough along to feel him yet, but it just seeing her was exactly what we needed. And I remember seeing her belly for the first time and just thinking, that's my son in there. It was
What a
incredible.
wild feeling. Like, what a
Yeah,
wild feeling.
yeah,
Um, were you excited to see her? This sounds weird coming out of my mouth, but were you excited to see her belly, knowing you were meeting your son? Did that feel like you were meeting him
yeah,
or no?
yeah. It was one of the coolest things. The We went again later in the process. We went again in February, last week of January, I can't remember. And she was very far along at that time.
Were her and her husband pretty open and accepting of you guys? Like, were they
Oh,
warm to
very,
you?
very. When we met the birth father for the first time. So, Jonathan, he likes to hug people that he knows, but not really strangers. The birth father came up to Jonathan and wrapped him in his arms, just like both arm hug, and told him, "You're the father." And
Wow.
from what I understand, after talking to our caseworker, because our caseworker still was very involved with us through the process, she was there for us. And then they gave me a resource for another woman here in Louisville who had adopted a Marshallese child as well. And they were there for us as resources through all of this. And
Wonderful.
it was needed and it was
I bet.
wonderful. Yes,
Yeah, because that's a different culture. Like, I'm sure you guys
yes,
ask a ton of questions and
yes,
like try to educate yourselves, which is
yes.
huge. So you guys met and then obviously like went to see her a few more times. So let's talk about your experience with the birth of Ezra.
So we went about 2 weeks before the due date. We went out to visit again because we just wanted to talk about things in person, about what to expect, because it was up to her. The process was up to her. So we went out there, we took them dinner,
Did she have
and
an
then,
option to back out at that point, or was she
oh,
like
she could
fully
back
committed?
out. No, she could back out.
Did you
She
have
had a,
anxiety about
oh my
that?
Lord. She had up to 10 days after he was born to back out.
Oh my gosh. Oof.
Yes. So I will explain a little bit more about that as well. 10 days isn't the normal situation. Okay, sorry, she had 5 days. Legally, in the state of Arkansas, you have 10 days, but she
Okay.
signed a waiver to 5 days. But we went out there and we visited, and I got to feel him move, and that was incredible. And they asked me to be in the room when he was born because they could have chosen for me not to be there. And I didn't want to just push myself in,
Hmm.
it's a delicate balance of, because they can still change their mind,
Yeah, you're
and
probably like pretty cautious. I mean, as anybody would be.
very. So she was due on February 1st. We decided we were going to take our camper out there because we had to be there for a little while after he was born. We couldn't leave the state of Arkansas until after the waiting period was over. We went to Arkansas. We got out there on February 15th. We took our camper out. It was just me and Jonathan, and we set up at a campsite. We got out, we got groceries, we took her dinner. The next morning we woke up, drove to the hospital. At this point, we're still, it's the 16th of February. The due date's not till the 21st. She hadn't been to her last 3 prenatal checkups. So we didn't know how dilated she was. We didn't know anything. And this was the 4th child she was going to be having, so we had no clue when she could go. Well, we took her dinner, then we came back to the camper, we went to bed. Of course, I'd had the volume up on my phone, and it was 1:42 a.m. We got a message from her saying that she was having contractions. So we met her at the hospital. They waited in the car for us to get there because only one person could go back into the emergency room with her, and they wanted to let me go.
It's a huge honor.
It was a huge honor. So Jonathan and the birth father waited in the waiting room, and me and the birth mother went into the ER, went to the back. The nurses were like, contractions aren't that bad. You're 3 centimeters dilated. So they monitored her, and she progressed in like 45 minutes. She went from 3 centimeters to 7, and they're like, we're having a baby. We hadn't even barely been there 24 hours, and which I feel like is another God thing. It's like, because we could have been there a whole nother week before she ever had him. She went into labor within about 24 hours of us being there.
Didn't have to like stay at the hospital for days. Like it could have been
Right.
days before she
Well,
had this baby.
right. And
Wow.
then it was a 9-hour drive from Louisville to there,
Yeah.
so it's like we would have ran the risk of, if we hadn't come early, would have ran the risk of me not being there for his birth, and she got her epidural, and from the time she got her epidural to the time he was born was 30 minutes. He
Oh
came
my
so
gosh.
fast. Yeah, he was born at,
That's awesome.
oh my, yeah, I think he was born at 6:02 in the morning. So the first thing they did was put him up on her chest and wrapped him up in a blanket, and I cut the umbilical cord, which was one of the most incredible experiences. She did not like hold on to him. You could tell they were already, because the birth father was in the room also, and I was on one side of her helping her push. The nurse was on the other side. So like where the father of the baby would normally be involved, I was involved. And it was one of the most incredible experiences, getting to see him born and then cutting the umbilical cord. They moved him then from her to a warmer because he was cold. So they had to put him on the warmer. He was very, very small, but he was very healthy. He was laying on the warmer, just looking around. He wasn't crying. That's what Jonathan says his first memory of Ezra was. I called Jonathan, and I said, you can come in the room now. And he said he walked in, and there he was, just laying there looking around with his big old brown eyes. Yeah.
So what was it like seeing him? Like what was going through your mind during this process?
I was just trying to be very mindful of the birth mother. My thought was trying to help her. I don't know if that's normal or if that's the nurse in me. That's where my mind was in that moment, was helping her feel confident, comfortable. That was really precious to me through this was in the process of us in the emergency room and in the delivery room, there is the language barrier, and she looked to me a lot to help her understand what people were saying, and that process bonded her and I. It was one
You
of my
felt connected.
favorite.
That's
I
awesome.
did. I did, and that's one of my favorite takeaways, is that the
Yeah.
bond her and I made that night.
That's precious. You can't replicate that. It's just in the
Mm-mm.
moment. And that's
Yeah.
beautiful. So tell me, when did you get to hold him?
Pretty well immediately. They were taking care of her after birth, after he got warmed up, and they did his footprints. They swaddled him and gave him to me. We sat there in the room. She gave permission for him to be in a room with us because technically she could have kept him in the room with her. They gave Jonathan and I a separate room. So at that point, we let the birth father hold him because he wanted to hold him. And then Jonathan and I went to our room with Ezra. So that was within 45 minutes of him being born. He went to a room with Jonathan and I, and
Good.
yeah,
So you
so
guys
we have
got
a
to do did you guys do like the skin to skin bonding
hmm
with both of you?
yeah. So when him and I got to
Precious.
the room, that's when Ezra and I did skin to skin. When we first got to the room for about an hour, and then Jonathan and Ezra did skin to skin for a little
So was
while.
Jackson wasn't there yet,
No,
right? It was just
so
you,
Jackson, it was just
Jonathan.
me and Jonathan. Yeah,
Yeah.
our family could not
That's
be there.
amazing. Did you guys feel immediately bonded with Ezra? What was that like?
It was no different for me than when Jackson was born. Um, it was pretty
Love that.
immediate. Yeah, he was mine for he
Wow.
was mine before he was ever born.
That's
Yeah,
amazing. I love
and then when
that.
he was born, he
How
was just
beautiful.
yeah. It was incredible. It's impossible to explain. I mean, because as a parent, when you give birth to a child, you have that connection of carrying them as a mom. I didn't get that, but I feel like the Lord gave me. I, it's only a thing I think it's only something God can do. I mean, He was already mine.
Yeah, like that this kind of like blows my mind because when I hear about this process, I think of all the human reactions to things. Like if I was going to go into an operating room with another like woman that I've only met a few times, like knowing I'm going to take her son, like I would feel in my brain, my human brain, I would feel like guilt, anxiety, fear, stress. And you're saying you felt none of those things.
I felt anxiety. Um, not in that moment. Not in that moment. But I did feel anxious following. In the delivery
Mhm.
room, there was
What,
not
what was it that gave you that anxiety?
just knowing she could take him back.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Um,
I didn't want to assume, but yeah,
yeah,
that
no,
would be
just just
hard to go through the
just
whole
knowing
process.
she could take him back. So we had our own room, and I was in the bed. They had him obviously in a bassinet, and then they had a like a reclining chair for Jonathan. And we put the bassinet right between Jonathan and I slept with my foot sticking out from the side of the bed. That way, if somebody tried to take him out of the room, it would wake me up because they could come and get him if they wanted to, but they
Oh my
never
gosh,
did.
that's
It was so stressful. Did see him several times while we were in the hospital, but they would always send us a text or Facebook message and
good.
ask if they could see him, and we would bring him to them, and we would stay
They
with
sound
him.
very respectful for people that have never been through this before
They
because
were
it's their first
extremely
experience too.
respectful. Yes, they were extremely
Wow.
respectful. So, another really awesome thing through the hospital process was the connection we made with them. We did spend a lot of time with them because they did want to see him, but we didn't want to leave him alone with them, not for any reason other than just our anxiety. um, and so we spent a lot of time with them. There was some paperwork they had to fill out, and there was the language barrier. And so we helped them fill out some of their paperwork, and it helped us bond. I think it helped them trust us more because we helped them. We brought them a big thing of snacks. One time we walked in to their room, they had asked to see him. And we walked in, and they were listening to the Gaither Vocal Band. It just felt like it was just a God thing. Like I felt his presence so strong. Like when I walked into that room and all my anxiety in that moment melted away. Like me and Jonathan are sitting there in the room with
Wow.
them and they're listening to the Gaither vocal band and we're both just sitting there crying, trying not to show that we're crying, but Jonathan and I both just look at each other and like in the middle of this extremely stressful, anxiety provoking time, God met with us in the hospital in their room. They were singing every word. The thing that stuck out the most
Wow.
was the
That's
song
so
was
awesome.
it was and one of the songs was there's a roof up above me. I have a good place to sleep. There's food on my table and shoes on my feet. You gave me your love, Lord, and a fine family. And I thank you, Lord, for your blessings on me. It was one of the songs when we're sitting there just crying because we're like, wow, God, it was
He
incredible.
provided.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he provided for that family in the process. He blessed two families. You
Yeah,
guys with a beautiful boy and them with a roof above their heads. Like,
yeah.
what an incredible story. So much deeper than I expected because, I mean, obviously, for someone that doesn't know the process, like, it's so so stressful. Like, I didn't
Yeah.
realize there were so many, like, outs that the family could have or, like, that they could
Yeah.
take the baby. Like,
Yeah.
that's a lot to
Yeah.
process. How long did you have to be in Arkansas before you could leave? What was the waiting period?
So he was born on a Monday. Um, and that was day 0. So they had 5 days that they could change their mind, 5 business days. Weekends did not count. So they had until the following Monday at 5 p.m. Central Time that they could change their mind. So we were there for a week in that area where he was born. We went to this Airbnb afterwards because it snowed. The day we came home from the hospital, it snowed like a foot. Yeah, it was
Oh my
like
gosh.
a blizzard. And so instead of staying in the camper with a newborn baby in a blizzard, we got an Airbnb. And when I tell you that I have never felt like I had walked into like a haven, walking into that Airbnb, like I still think about that Airbnb, and like when I'm washing bottles, it like triggers a memory of being in that Airbnb. And it's almost after being at the hospital, it was like the safest place in the world feeling walking into that Airbnb with our baby. One of the
Beautiful.
scriptures that we have always kind of looked to through our process of infertility was delight yourself in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of your heart. And we walked in and that scripture was on the wall. And it was just like, okay, God telling us just another time that
Confirmation.
he was with us. So we stayed in the Airbnb for 3 nights. At that point, my mom and dad brought Jackson because we didn't know how long we were going to have to be there, and I couldn't be away from Jackson for that long. So my parents came up
No,
with
of course not. Yeah.
Jackson. No. And so Jackson met Ezra, and he was in love from the second he met him. So we stayed in that
I love seeing their
Airbnb.
pictures together. They're so cute together.
They are. They are so cute. They're complete opposites. Ezra's tan and dark hair, dark eyes.
That's what makes them
Jackson's
so
pale.
special.
Yeah.
I know.
And so we stayed in an
That's
Airbnb.
gonna be so cute even as they get older though,
I
you
know, I
know?
love it. And then after that, we stayed in a
Mhm.
hotel for a few nights because the snow still hadn't melted, and Jackson wanted to swim. So we stayed in a hotel with my parents, and Jackson swam. I swam with Jackson, and mom just held Ezra for me so I could give Jackson some attention. And after that, mom and dad left and took Jackson with them. And so it's just me, Jonathan, and Ezra again. And then Monday finally came, and we took Ezra to see them before we started to leave. Now, we still couldn't leave Arkansas because our lawyer, after the 5 day waiting period, so Monday at 5 p.m., once that was up, our lawyer filed with the court system. In Arkansas, they do adoption a little different. And so we still had to wait for a judge to sign our adoption decree. But when we left Arkansas, he was 100% our baby. He was fully adopted when we left the state of Arkansas. Most situations, it's several months after they get the baby, just under like a temporary custody type thing. When we left
Mhm.
the state of Arkansas, he was Ezra Wayne Street, and his birth certificate said Meagan Ruth Street and Jonathan Wayne Street.
That's so sweet. He is
Yeah.
just the cutest little baby and just what a blessing. The Lord has so many ways of showing us that he cares about us, and I didn't realize that you were struggling with infertility, so I appreciate you sharing that and being vulnerable in that area. I thought you guys just made a decision to adopt. It sounds like Jackson, it's been easy, like
Mm-hmm.
bringing the boys together and,
Yeah.
from all the photos, like they absolutely adore each other, which is
Yeah.
so, so sweet. Have there
Yeah.
been any challenges? I know he's only 14 months old, but being a mother, like after not being pregnant, like was there anything challenging there?
It was incredible because, I mean,
Girl,
I didn't,
I bet, 'cause being
I
pregnant's the
didn't,
worst.
yes, I mean, I didn't have to recover. And like I said, with Jackson, I had postpartum depression. I didn't have all the hormone swings. I didn't have, any of that
Which
stuff.
I appreciate you sharing that too. Like,
Yeah.
that's I also did not know that about your experience. So again,
Yeah.
like that's why I love this setting because we can learn so much about each other. I've been pretty vocal about my postpartum
Yeah.
depression and had no idea that it was even a thing until I had a
Mhm.
baby. I didn't understand it. The fact that you didn't have to deal with all of that is a huge blessing.
Yeah. I mean, it was a game
So,
changer. It helped it, after the waiting period was
I bet.
over, I was just so able to just enjoy him. I wasn't recovering. It was hard to truly just fully enjoy him until that waiting period was over. You, because it's like they still can take him.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, the
but
stress was there until it was over.
yes. But we just really trusted God through it. I mean, he brought us to it. And so we just had to trust that he was going to, I mean,
Yes.
not to sound cliche, but bring us through it.
Yeah, he showed you signs along the way, confirmed things to you. You
Yeah.
know, the fact that there was one situation you looked at, the fact that, you had the confirmation of the scripture in the Airbnb, like I
Hmm.
don't think any of those are coincidences because God
No,
sees us. He knows right where we're
absolutely.
at and what we need to hear. Is there anything that you can think of that is a misconception that now you know after you've had a baby for 14 months?
The open adoption is a very big misconception. Something that a lot of adopted children struggle with is identity issues, not feeling like they belong. And I'll reference also a podcast that you did previously that really spoke to me was Brittany Lane. She talked about her situation with her, great uncle and aunt raising her and how she felt like a burden, and that carried over into her adult life. And I'm just going to say, since I know and love her, that broke my heart to hear that because she's the
Right?
furthest
Because we
thing.
never felt that about her.
Lord, she's the furthest
Yeah,
thing from a burden. She's a wonderful person, and
100%.
I'm thankful that I get the privilege to know her. And so to hear that from her,
Same.
and to know that helped, that touched me because I don't ever want Ezra to feel like a burden. I mean, and I don't
Right.
ever want him to struggle with identity issues. I want him to have all the knowledge he can have. I want him to know. I don't want to dread the day that he wants to meet his biological parents. That's one of the biggest misconceptions is the open adoption being bad. Because I just don't think it is because of all the studies, because so many reasons. But our open adoption, it's all on our terms. We have full control.
Good. That's
If,
huge. I
yes,
appreciate
if,
you saying that because I'm unaware.
yes.
So what does that look
So our adoption agreement states that we agreed to continue communication and yearly visits as long as we find it in his best interest. And so if at any point it became not in his best interest, we could terminate, because they have no rights
the
over
visit?
him.
Yeah,
We
that's
have
that's a
full
big
rights.
deal. Whenever we talked about this before and you said you guys had an open adoption, I'll be honest, like I was concerned because I
Sure.
thought I tried to put myself in your shoes and say like how would I feel bringing my
Sure.
baby around his birth parents?
Yeah.
Um, but because you have full control, does that
Hmm.
give you a bit more comfort in
Absolutely.
having like that open communication? Yeah, that
Absolutely.
makes perfect sense.
You
Like
know, and
I understand more.
and until you've done this, you can't even like it's impossible to imagine. I love his birth mom so much. She gave me one of the greatest blessings of my life. If it was not for
Of
her,
course.
I would not have my son. And I love her. And I will always love her. And I want to continue a relationship with her. If it's been a while since I've heard from her, I'll reach out to her.
Precious. Yeah.
I mean, I just on his first birthday, I reached out to her. I love
And
her.
she's been like pretty receptive to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She has been great. There have been a few small issues, nothing big at all. Nothing big at all.
Mhm.
There's just been a few things we've had to set some boundaries. Like I said, nothing big, just some cultural differences. But truly, it's been very, very good. And the
I'm
other day
so
she
I'm so
asked,
happy for you.
one of my greatest prayers is that it continues this way.
We'll
And
be
so
praying
that
for you because I I can't imagine the challenges, but it sounds like things have been so smooth for you guys up to this point, and
Yeah,
the Lord sees you. He'll continue to keep you through this experience, and um, there's going to be there's challenges with any child, like
absolutely.
any child raising a child.
Absolutely.
So I think it's wonderful that you guys have like open communication. Like that is like beyond what I would expect as somebody that's not done this. So I think
Sure.
that's kind of eye opening.
Sure.
Um, based on what you've experienced now, um, what do you want people to understand about how like we can better support families going through this experience?
Giving your opinion when you have absolutely zero knowledge is, I think, one of the biggest things that I can say is, so many people like to vocalize their opinion, especially about the open adoption stuff, and especially about me continuing a relationship. So many people are like, oh, you can say you're going to do open adoption and then just, not. And it's like, I don't want that. It's like,
Yeah,
so I feel like one of the biggest things to help support is just not giving your opinion when you don't really have any knowledge of a situation. You know what I mean?
for sure.
Like, a, you could give me advice on parenting, you know, you can give me advice on things that you know about, but with the adoption process, when
Mhm.
you have no understanding, I feel like that's one of the biggest things is just
Yeah.
just loving and supporting and not giving your opinion.
That's great, and I feel like that applies through any parenting experience, but
Absolutely.
especially something that is, like, unique. Like, not
Yeah.
everybody goes through this experience. You're very blessed that you've been able to experience this. I think people dream about adopting
Hmm.
children and never
Yeah.
do it for
Yeah.
one
It's a
reason or
dream.
another, so this is a beautiful story that's just beginning. Like, I'm so excited to see Ezra grow up and be part of obviously, he's your child, part of your
Yeah.
family, and watch him flourish and
Yeah.
thrive. What are your thoughts for the future with him? Like, do you plan to get him, like, more ingrained in his culture? Like, tell me about that.
Absolutely. So one of the most incredible things about being in Louisville is that there's a lot of Marshallese adopted children here. May 9th, we're going to a picnic, Marshallese adopted children. And I
Wow,
am so
that's beautiful.
excited. Yes, I'm so
I
excited.
had no idea that Louisville, Kentucky,
Yeah,
like,
I know. I know.
of all places,
I
like,
know.
wow.
So I think it's because of our adoption agency. They
Mhm,
work very closely with this lawyer in Arkansas. And like
mhm.
I said earlier, this culture does do a lot of adoption because they don't believe in birth control. And so this lawyer likes working with the adoption agency here in Louisville.
Got it.
Yeah,
Wow, that's I would have never guessed, and I
yeah,
think that's such a blessing for you guys, like, for Ezra to grow up with other
hmm,
kids, like, in a similar culture, like,
yeah,
that's beautiful, and
yeah,
I feel like God based on what you've shared with me, it seems like God's been providing for you guys from the beginning before you guys obviously even had this opportunity to adopt this beautiful baby.
hmm.
Um, what a blessing. I'm so grateful that you've shared your story. What is there anything else that you would like for listeners to know about this experience?
I wish everybody could experience the love that adoption has brought to our home. Um, it's just been the biggest and greatest blessing of our life. Um, to see the blessing adoption has brought to complete our family,
Mhm.
to give Jackson a little brother. I mean, it's it's just incredible. It's the most beautiful thing. And I mean, obviously, I don't know what it's like to have a second biological child. I'm sure it's just as great of a blessing, but having this through adoption has been incredible. And I'm so thankful that I get to live, like you said, it's a dream for so many people. And
Mhm.
I am so thankful and so blessed that I get to live this dream because it really is.
What would you say to somebody that feels maybe they thought about adopting, but they backed out of it for whatever reason. Maybe they're afraid because of all the variables. You guys, like, this wasn't an easy process for you. You had this massive application, the waiting period, the interview, the 9 months of pregnancy, really, that you had
Mhm.
to watch this woman go through. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And I feel
Mhm.
like, that does make it even more special, right? Because it was
Sure.
a process and then you
Yeah.
have this beautiful baby. But what would you say to a family that's thinking about it and maybe they're kind of on the fence?
Do it. I mean, just do it. It is hard. Will I adopt again? No. Would I do this again, knowing the outcome? 100 times over and over and over. Would I go through everything that we went through emotionally, mentally, physically, financially? 100%. I would do it over and over and over and over again. And I had a friend tell me when I went through this process. It's something that will always stick with me, and I think it's one of the wisest and most profound things that was said to me through the process was no matter how a child comes into your home, there has to be labor. Whether it's physical labor or whether it's the kind of labor we went through. No matter how a child comes into your home, there has to be labor. And that was just our labor. And it was 100% worth it.
So, I'm feeling so many emotions. I'm so inspired. I'm feeling the love. Like I could feel when you're talking about the love in your family. Like I feel it. I'm so moved. So there are families more than I would like to see struggling with infertility. And I just met with Alyssa Hamburger and she shared
Hmm.
her fertility journey.
Yeah.
She struggled for 3 years before she was able to conceive,
Hmm.
which that will be another episode. But I want those mothers to feel seen and feel
Sure.
encouraged as they're going through the struggle with infertility. What would you say to encourage somebody that's been there?
Oh my goodness. Alyssa was, it was interesting because Alyssa and I were kind of both going through infertility at the same time a little bit. And I remember her and I would kind of text and just keep up with each other through it. Not, in depth or anything, but just, hey, I'm praying for you. But that's a hard question. Um, because there wasn't much anyone could say to me through that process to make it better, to make it easier. You know, I feel like just being a listening ear, letting people know that you're there,
Mhm.
because there's not really anything you can say to a woman whose heart just longs to be a mom. You
Yeah.
know, there was nothing anyone could say to me to make me feel better about it. Not even someone who's been through it could say anything to help me feel better.
Mhm.
Um, so my greatest advice again is kind of just not giving opinions, not even saying much, just being there.
Yeah,
Just
being present.
yes, being present. I'm praying for you, I love you. What can I do for you? How can I pray for you? How can I help you today? I mean, there's not really much you can say. At least for me, there wasn't. So just being
Yeah, and
present.
everybody's different for sure, and I think that's exactly what Alyssa shared, which you'll hear. Um, and there was a lot of people think that they are helping by talking when really they just make it worse.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
I always feel like in any trial we go through, it's awesome to have people that are just there. They're not like
Yeah.
trying to like fix it,
Yeah.
because they can't fix it.
Right.
Um, but whenever you made the decision to adopt versus continuing the path of, trying to, conceive, there had to be some type of decision. Like, how was that? How did you feel?
When we decided to go down the process of adoption, I almost instantly felt relief from the burden I was carrying in a way. I do grieve. If I had known I was only going to be able to have Jackson, I would have enjoyed that process more. I did like being pregnant. I had a good pregnancy. I would love to be able to do that again. I would love to be able to have carried another child because I loved doing it. There's no difference in my heart and how I feel about Ezra versus Jackson. And that's God's honest truth. I just personally would love to be able to carry another child because I loved it. I did. I loved being pregnant. I
I
loved the
can relate. I
process.
mean, I can relate. I'd love to have
Yeah.
another baby. I can completely relate to you,
Yeah.
in that area, and I know women that have shared that they've had a baby and they're struggling to have a second, and I
Sure.
think that happens a lot,
Yeah.
and don't the mothers don't wanna talk about it,
Well,
because it's
I
hard,
had a
it's painful.
yeah, it is. And I had a misconception that it's like you hear all these stories like, "Oh, I had a hard time having my first one." And then after I got pregnant with my first one, it's like it unclogged something and now I've had like 12 children, you know. And so it's like I almost kind of expected that. You know what I mean? And then when that didn't happen and then having Jackson asking for a sibling, like that was hard. Once we signed up to adopt, it almost alleviated that. Um it did alleviate the
That's
and
huge.
it was almost like I got pregnant. Almost,
Yeah,
because then
because 'cause you're
after that
expecting
though,
not your
yes,
physical body, but you're expecting a baby, yeah.
right. Then after that, I did get a little nervous about, well, will we ever match? Will we ever match? So there was still some anxiety. Just like when you're pregnant, there's
Mhm.
the anxiety, of course, until you get to a certain point in pregnancy, is something going to happen?
Correct.
And honestly,
Yes,
until the
correct.
baby's birthed out of your body, there's still always that fear that something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
of course.
So, I mean,
You're right.
it's
You're
it's not
100%
that
right.
all that anxiety was completely gone, but it's almost like once we started that process, it had me so engrossed that it did fill that void of, tracking things and all of that stuff.
Part of this is a little selfish because, I
Sure,
mean, I know some women they wanna conceive up to their 40s, right?
sure.
I am not that person. Like, I do not wanna go through this process when I'm 40. Like, I feel like having a baby at my age, having Sophia was so hard, and my body didn't do what it was supposed to. I had to have an
Mhm.
emergency C-section, it got infected, blah, blah, blah. It's
Yeah,
terrible story. I love
sure,
my daughter. It's been amazing having her, but the pregnancy birth was terrible. So I can understand why women like never want to go through it again
sure.
or not at all.
Yeah,
And just like adopt. Like I get it.
yeah,
So I think I find it to be interesting because everybody has a different like experience of becoming a mother, and it's not all the same, but it's all hard. It doesn't matter
yeah.
what process or
You're
path
right.
or way you get there. And I think that's what you've
Yeah,
expressed and displayed in this conversation
yeah,
because it was hard both ways.
yeah. No
But
matter
for
how you
me,
bring a
like I
baby into
don't
your home, there's got to be labor.
exactly. And I
Yeah,
think, we expect just human like we expect the perfect dream of like the ease of getting pregnant, the ease of birth, the ease of baby. And then it's like when it doesn't happen, we internalize and say like something is wrong with me. Something
absolutely.
is physically wrong with me. Like I've struggled with this after having a baby. It never
Hmm.
ends. Like it doesn't mean
Yeah,
a baby's going to be like I am perfect. Like
right.
no, like I couldn't breastfeed, like I couldn't have a baby naturally. So you go through all these things of like God, what's wrong with my body?
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with our bodies. We're just born into a world of sin and death.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're a result of what we're born into.
Yeah,
And I feel like I hope that that encourages any woman that's going through difficulty in motherhood, whether that's pregnancy struggles, delivery struggles, infertility, thinking of adopting, like we're just a product of this world. Like it's not something we should internalize and like that is a weight that we don't have to carry. And
absolutely.
I pray. I know that that's not the perfect answer or can help like magically fix someone's heart because you can't. God is the only one that can fix a broken heart. The
Hmm.
only one.
Absolutely.
But your story is so inspiring because I hope that it can give other women hope that even if it's an adoption, I don't even want to say even if because it's an
Yeah,
amazing story, it's a dream.
yeah,
But if they go that route, they're going to feel the same feelings that you
yeah,
felt the first time you had a baby.
absolutely. 100%. I can't stress that
That's
enough. Like, this isn't a fix. Adopting Ezra wasn't well, I can't do this, so I'll just settle for this. Ezra is not that. I mean, he's just our baby. We just had him a different way.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, it's your own family, your own
yeah,
story, and God designed it. You didn't craft it. I mean,
right.
people can craft their own families by having multiple pregnancies. Like you guys literally didn't like plan this or plan to have Ezra, right? God put this together.
Yeah,
So, I really appreciate you sharing your story and um this has just been like very I knew it would be because it's just a beautiful testimony. There's a lot of women that I think consider adoption and they don't know anything about it.
sure.
So, I think that's why this is so valuable because you've been through it, you've experienced it.
When I was searching and I was looking for hope through adoption, I would search the internet and try to find people where I could find real stories, real testimonials, and it was hard to come by. And I want to be that. You know, I want to be that for people. I want to be that lifeline for people. And that's one reason why I was so excited to do this. It's just because I want to be that for the women who are looking for that encouragement.
Well, it's very encouraging. I'm encouraged and it's just beautiful because I feel like I get to be part of your journey now,
Yeah.
and I feel like this is going to let other people in. They're going to see your heart. They're going to see like everything you felt during this process and they'll feel more connected with you too. Thank you so much for joining. I think this is beautiful and I can't wait to have a part 2 because I know that the story is just getting started.
Yeah, it's just getting started. We're only we're about, let's see, we're 2 years in, considering pregnancy and everything. We're almost 2 years in.
Yep. There's going to be
Yeah,
so much more and just seeing him grow up. I'm so excited just to be part
yeah,
of your life and you and Jonathan. I've known you guys since you were dating and it's just
yeah,
like I don't know, it's so awesome to see the way that God leads us and
yeah, absolutely.
it's not like it's not prescripted, right? It's like I never would have thought that you would have an adopted
Yeah,
baby and live in
yeah,
Louisville, Kentucky, like when we first met. So it's just God sees, right? He has the path for us and
yeah.
we just got to keep trusting him and holding on to his hand. Thanks, mamas, for joining and listening to Meagan's story of adopting her lovely, beautiful little boy, Ezra. And we appreciate you joining and definitely subscribe to the channel and join every Tuesday at 10 a.m. for a new episode on the Mamas Who Brunch. Thanks so much.